Welcome everybody to my live video about conflict management. So the reason I decided to do this live is because I posted in the Q&A story about, I asked a question and people asked me to describe attachment styles and conflict and how that shows up. And obviously in 1 minute reels, we can't really answer that. And a lot of people message me saying, can you please explain further? So today we'll casually dedicate this session for that. Okay. If you have any questions, you can just type them as we go. I'll try my best to answer them. But keep it to the topic of conflict management. We don't want to veer off, otherwise we'll be here forever. This will be probably a lengthy session. I tend to talk a lot, I realize. And yeah, so this will be good information for people struggling with this issue. So what is the anxious and avoidant dance? So we call it the anxious avoidant dances because it's a cycle that consists of patterns and behaviors. There's a push and pull. There's a bit of push and pull, attack, defend, scenario happening, and the anxious person first I'll describe what their needs are and why they have that, and then we can describe exactly what it is. So attachment styles are formed in childhood. That's the first thing you need to know. Okay. And they continually developing throughout your life. The first couple of years of your life is the most important. Your relationship with your caregiver, your parent-child bond that you had. Whether your parent was consistent, they influence how people relate to others in adulthood. So that's the theory. And especially in romantic relationships, right? This is very important because you can be, one thing with people who are not too close and something else with people who are very close to you. We see this a lot. And anxious attachment is more categorized within the insecure category. So there's two categories. There's two categories of attachment styles, two main categories. So you've got secure and you've got insecure attachment styles. Underneath the insecure category, you got four more categories. Or we'll summarize them to three. Some people say four, some people say three. So underneath insecure, you got anxious attached, you got avoidant attached, and you got disorganized, okay? Or which is another word for it is dismissive avoidant. So I'll explain what the anxious attachment style is. And the reason why I'm focusing on this is because, studies say around 80% of couples actually fall into this dance, the anxious avoidant dance. And this is why we're talking about it. It comes up a lot in counseling, and I'm sure you will relate. So anxious attachment, the caregiver, the parent was inconsistent, not responsive, and unpredictable to the emotional attunement of the child. So there was a lot of inconsistencies. The child couldn't depend on the parent to be there for them as much as they needed. How this can relate to us is, you probably hear our parents and the older generation sort of saying, let your child just cry it out, shut the door and let them cry for hours, screaming their heads off. And they say, don't go in the room, otherwise you're going to teach it to be needy, right? And this is absolutely flawed. This is the worst thing that you can do, damage your child like this. When the child is reaching out for connection, if you don't attend to it, to the best of your ability, then the child will then learn through, repeated behavior that I need to soothe myself. I can't depend or rely on them. Now, in the anxious category, they were inconsistent with this and they were unpredictable. And just a side note with this point here, people who are divorced, this happens a lot. If the father, let's say, is avoidant, and the mother is anxious, some avoidant fathers would not want to give a routine to the child, like set days that the child can depend on. because the avoidant person, which we'll get to in a minute, doesn't like commitment. They fear commitment out of fear of failure, right? They fear this commitment that, no, I don't want to give you set days, because what if there's that one day that I don't make it? Then you're going to shame me for that. So they hyper focus on this scenario that may not happen or may not happen. So therefore, there's no consistency. The child doesn't know what day the dad will pick up the child. So just a side point to anyone who's divorced, it's of utmost importance that you set a routine for your children. They know when the parents will do the changeovers. Set times is very, very important for the well-being of the child and their development. So that's the anxious attachment. When they grow up, so if you grow up like this with parents like that, when they grow up, they'll be very sensitive and nervous. They'll have a nervous system that's on high alert, and they fear abandonment. Okay, you will fear abandonment. They'll be confused. They'll be seeking reassurance all the time. You know, do you love me? They'll repeat that, and they won't believe the answer, right? They need approval. They seek approval all the time. They're untrusting, and they can come across as, you know, needy. So that's how it looks like in adulthood, right? Or in relationships. Their relationships tend to be largely consumed with this thought. You know, most of their emotional energy is about, does my spouse, and I'm going to say husband because most women are anxiously attached according to studies, but not all. I have met anxiously attached men, but we'll just use for this video, women anxious, men avoidant. That's why the wife would constantly say, you know, do you love me? Can you compliment me? You know, frequently. And that drains their energy. You know, their fear of abandonment. If there's a fight, if there's an argument, the avoidant person would walk away, and I'll explain why soon. They might shut down. They will withdraw. And then the anxious person's alarm bells, nervous system goes in high alert, and they fear that abandonment there. So they need reassurance. I'll explain exactly what you can do, tips, advice on how to treat each other at the end of this session, okay? Avoidant attached people, their parents were very emotionally unattuned, disengaged as well, and very distant, very rigid to the child. There may have been abuse with this one, where the child also learned how to not depend on anyone else, and they rely on themselves. So they become they lack trust as well. Growing up, they feel uncomfortable when there's too much closeness. This is the underlying point here. They feel very uncomfortable when closeness is too much. So imagine two circles. The avoidant person, you know, this is the one partner A, partner B. When there's too much closeness, they become anxious. They become nervous. They're very uncomfortable with that. So then they would push away. They're happy at a distance. They're happy when there's a distance there. When there's too much closeness, that's where their alarm systems go off. The anxious person can't be comfortable with that distance there. They need closeness, right? Sometimes too much closeness. So they push away when there's intimacy or expectations or needs, something got to do with romance. They may push away, and they tend not to open up to their partners. There's that emotional distance, you know, even emotional deprivation as well. Their partners will complain or will have signs of being emotionally deprived. And they are often on high alert for any signs of control. So this is the avoidant person. They're on high alert for any signs of control and become very defensive with that. So we're going to focus on the anxious, and we're going to focus on the avoidant dance. Okay. So that's pretty much a quick overview on those two attachment styles. Again, both of these fall under the category of insecure. So there are some insecurities underneath both of these attachment styles. So what are some behaviors that come up in their conflict? Some behaviors that come up are, there's four main behaviors that come up. There's criticism, there's defensiveness, there's contempt that shows up as well, and there's also stonewalling, the silent treatment. These four behaviors are destructive. They will ruin the relationship. They cause distance. They break emotional connection, and it leaves both parties feeling unhappy. Okay, so let me describe what criticism is first, and the rest. So criticism is, let's say the anxious partner has a complaint because they're unhappy that their avoidant partner is distant. So they might bring it up in a way that is critical. You know, they might say, I feel that you don't love me. I feel that you don't find me attractive. I feel that you're not interested in me. Now, this is a criticism. And, you know, some people say, oh, but I said I feel. So that way I'm expressing feelings. No. I feel needs to conclude with an emotion, right? It needs to conclude with a feeling, not labeling or criticizing your partner. So saying, I feel you don't love me is a criticism, right? You'd have to say something like, I feel distant, I feel lonely, I feel unloved, I feel not attractive, right? Instead of, I feel you don't love me. But the anxious person, their nervous system becomes dysregulated, and they will bring up their complaint, even if they tread carefully and nicely and use gentle words. The avoidant person, he hears an attack. He hears that he's being blamed, that he's being shamed. And he takes it as a criticism. He takes it as, you don't appreciate me. And then instead of focusing on the main problem, which was the first problem that was brought up, they end up in a push and pull cycle. So the anxious person doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel close, doesn't feel understood. They bring up their problem. The avoidant person becomes defensive and pushes them away. The more they become defensive and pull away, the more anxious the anxious person gets. So then they escalate. They become more heightened because they're sensitive to outside threats. They're very sensitive to outside threats, and they have that fear of being abandoned. So out of that fear of being abandoned, they will raise their voice. Maybe they will, be consistent in advocating for themselves, expressing what they want, because they desire that stability, that closeness. Whereas the other person, the more anxious the anxious person becomes, then the more avoidant the other person becomes. They end up hurting each other with words, with criticism, with defensiveness, with contempt, and with stonewalling. And then they just get tired. They go silent for a bit. The avoidant person may become withdrawn and give the silent treatment. They might give the silent treatment for hours or days, right? And there's a lot to say about the silent treatment. It is a form of emotional abuse. And maybe I should have said this disclaimer earlier, that this does not apply, the advice I'm going to give does not apply to narcissists, narcissistic abuse, people in narcissistic relationships, domestic violence, or anything of that nature. I don't believe these work with a narcissist, okay? So we're talking people who are not narcissistic, people who don't have that antagonistic personality, right? So there'll be that silence, the problem won't be resolved, the needs are still unmet, and then therefore you're left with emotional distance. So let's look at what anxious people really are trying to do. What are they trying to do? They're trying to connect. The anxious person, when they're complaining, when they're saying stuff like, you don't love me, can we spend some time together, you're always working, etc., they're trying to get a need met. The avoidant person, usually their way of expressing love is through, and again, this could be man or woman, husband or wife, the way they express their love is through other means, but from a distance. So it could be working long hours, having a badge of honor with the long hours that they do, the money that they provide, the work that they do outside of intimacy. So when they hear the anxious person complaining, they straight away go back to, well, you don't appreciate me. Everything that I do and you're still complaining, because that's their love language. Their love language is, through acts of service, through paying the bills, through being a martyr type of thing. So here are some tips for people with anxious attachment tendencies. So if you are anxiously attached, this is you. Here are some tips. The first tip is be willing to acknowledge your childhood pain. These could be some traumas, some things that you went through, but disclaimer as well, you don't want to share this with someone who's going to use this against you. And this is why I warned you cannot use this with a narcissist, because they will latch onto that and they will use it against you later on, right? So being vulnerable to a narcissist is actually very dangerous. So just a reminder with that. But you got to be willing to acknowledge your childhood pain. So that way your partner can learn to be sensitive with them, to learn about you, all parts of you. You don't want to suppress and hide parts of you around your partner. And we see this a lot in this dance, that one partner suppresses themselves, hides parts of themselves that their partner doesn't approve of. Whether they're too happy or loud, or there's a certain hobby or a certain way they speak, or what, something that they do. The husband or the partner doesn't like it. So then they suppress that part of themselves, and that also creates that distance. But the first tip is to be willing to express and acknowledge your own childhood pain. Acknowledge your own childhood pain. A lot of people with insecure attachment styles will tell you, well, I've had a good childhood. I haven't got any traumas. Well, that may be right. They might be also fearing, I don't want to backbite my parents, especially if you're religious. They might feel guilt with that. And I understand that guilt, But acknowledging your childhood pain doesn't mean that you're trash talking your parents, right? It doesn't mean that you're not appreciative to your parents. Now, you may have been taught that or told that, well, you should always be appreciative. You can't complain. And that's part of the problem, right? That's why you're anxiously attached in the first place. But acknowledging your own pain, that two realities can exist. The first reality is my parents did their best based on their resources and their knowledge and their information, their capabilities. But at the same time, it wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't healthy for my development. I needed more, I needed something different. So two realities can exist. And so the first tip is to acknowledge your own childhood pain. Okay. And if you can share that with your partner who provides that safety, not the narcissist, then do so they can be aware of that. You might say something like, Dad never used to come home, right? Maybe he was an alcoholic. Maybe he was addicted to gambling or addicted to drugs, and he would go on benders, or he would cheat, right? Or he would work super long hours, and his hours were very unpredictable. He would come home, we'd be asleep, would wait for him, but he wouldn't come. He'd wake up early in the morning and go to work. So, you sharing that with your partner, then they can learn why you are the way you are. The second tip is to bring compassion towards the parts of yourself that feel abandoned. Okay. So there are parts of yourself that feel abandoned, and usually there's this negative self-dialogue. I'm not good enough. I'm shit. I'm unlovable. No one loves me. Everyone hates me. No one respects me. People will leave me if I don't do this. I must always be perfect. Otherwise, people will abandon me. There's this internal dialogue that is really loud, right? So compassion towards those parts is first acknowledging that, what happened to you, you didn't deserve. And this is really a short version of it, but replacing those beliefs with something more real. So instead of no one respects me, a more real belief is maybe one person or some people don't respect me, but other people do. Not everyone loves me, but some people do. That's a more compassionate approach towards yourself. So you've got to have self-compassion. The next step, if you are anxiously attached, is begin to gently question or challenge your fears when you become triggered. So don't just react when you're triggered, because you're perceiving abandonment, you're perceiving something, whether it's real or not. Do not act out of impulse, So don't be reactive. Pause. Create a rule for yourself that you will breathe 20 times and listen more than you speak before you respond, right? So you want to respond instead of react, and gently question your fears. What's really going on with me? Is this real? Is it really, my partner going to divorce me or going to leave me? Or is it just something that I'm thinking about, But challenge your fears. Challenge them, because most of the times, thoughts aren't facts, right? The next tip is to practice expressing your needs more directly. So this goes back to criticism, right? Anxiously attached people will criticize when they need something. Like I said, I feel you don't love me. I feel you don't find me attractive. You never spend time with me, right? You're always prioritizing other people and you never prioritize me. These are criticisms. And when you're being attacked like this, the avoidant person will respond with defensiveness. So it's kind of like inviting them to attack you, because no one's going to listen there and say, thanks, babe, for telling me how crap I am. You know what I mean? Let's go have dinner. Let's go on a date. Thank you. No one's going to do that. When you're being attacked like this, your character's been attacked, your personality's been attacked, your behavior's been attacked. And plus, they're already avoidant, so they're already perceiving attacks. They're very hypervigilant to, the environment to see who's trustworthy and who's not, because already the avoidant person doesn't trust anyone. They're already on high alert looking for confirmation who not to trust, right? So express your needs more directly. And it goes as follows. This is a golden tip. First, you start with how you feel. I feel lonely. I miss you. It's really that simple, right? Obviously wait till you're regulated. Don't do it when you're angry or whatever, but I miss you. I feel lonely. I feel unattractive. This is you being vulnerable. How you feel. I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel whatever you want, right? Then you ask, or then you mention why. Why do you feel this way? Or what contributed? What behaviors they did that impacted you? This helps also them to take responsibility and accountability. And here is the opposite to criticism. You don't want to say you're always late and you're never attracted to me and you're whatever. That's a sweeping overgeneralization. You would say, because I feel lonely, and then you state why. You'd be very specific. You say, because, Allah ya'tik al-afiyah, may Allah reward you, you've been working long hours. Fact. Or the last 3 days, the last 5 days, you've been coming home late. And I appreciate you coming home late. You're working, may Allah reward you. But this is why I feel this way, right? So it's very specific without attacking. It's factual, specific. You're not bringing up more than one problem, and they can't disagree with that. It's like, yeah, I have been working late, Step 3 is you express your needs directly and gently. Now, what anxious people do, or what a lot of people do, is they will ask and demand. They make demands. There's protesting. They demand what they need. And people don't like to hear that. That's also a criticism, right? People don't like to be spoken down to like they're little people, right? People like to be respected. Everyone likes to be respected, and everyone deserves respect. So you don't ask for what you don't need. That's where people go wrong. They say, I need you to stop working long hours. I need you, to prioritize me. I need you to stop going to your mum's house or whatever, right? I need you to stop. You're asking for what you don't need, right? Asking for what you do need in a non-demanding way would be, I need closeness. You didn't even point the finger at them. You say, I need to be close to you. I feel like I want to be close to you. I need closeness. I need to spend time with you. I need us to spend time with each other. Like that, right? Hopefully by then they're not listening to criticism, right? So this is just the way to express your needs more directly. And then you can ask them, how can we get this? How can we achieve this? It's open discussion, The next tip is to learn to slowly share your abandonment fears with your partner, right? So here you can express more with people who earn your trust. Okay, again, you can go back into your childhood and tell them why you have these fears. Again, going back, dad wasn't home, mum was inconsistent, etc. When you do this, my nervous system becomes anxious, and it reminds me of the past. It reminds me of my mum. It reminds me of my dad. Now that's you being vulnerable. If you're on the receiving end, don't you dare take that for granted. You need to be gentle. You need to listen with empathy. You cannot say, well, get over it was the past. There's a myth out there that you need to heal yourself 100% before you come into a relationship, and that's absolutely false. While we have a lot to do on our own, a lot of work on our own, when you're married, your partner has a big part also to play in it. They have to be sensitive to your securities, to your insecurities. The healing has to happen in that relationship. And that's, the myth is that, no, that's a you problem. You know what I mean? That's not my problem that you have this insecurity. And that's very narcissistic as well, saying stuff like that. That's not true. Okay, partners have a role to be sensitive towards insecurities and respect those insecurities and not be abusive towards those insecurities. The next tip, the last tip is to take responsibility when you project or act out in your fears in hurtful ways. Anxious people, when you project or act out on your fears in hurtful ways, you don't apologize for saying, I feel lonely, can we please spend time? No, you don't apologize for that, right? But if you act it out like you don't love me and shouting and screaming and causing some problems there, being dysregulated and being disrespectful, then take responsibility for that. Later on when you've regulated yourself, offer an apology, offer a repair attempt. Come up and say, I criticized you earlier and I apologize for that. That was hurtful. Do not say, I'm sorry, but you hurt me. Do not say but after the apology. Keep it on you. You don't say, I'm sorry, but had you, not worked overtime, I wouldn't have been. No, you don't do that. You say, I am sorry. I take responsibility for. Mention what you did. I yelled at you. I said words that are bad and they were hurtful, and I apologize, and then full stop. So that's some tools for the person with anxious tendencies. Now, some ways to communicate your needs if you have this anxious attachment, right? So you can say stuff like, I really understand your heightened need for space to the avoidant person, right? Because they need space. They don't want closeness. Remember, there's two circles. They want to be here. You want to be here, right? This is not healthy. This is too far. But you would say, I really understand your heightened need for space. And I understand you need your alone time after work. And it would really help me if you can just try to communicate with me when you need a break. So I don't think something's wrong between us, so I don't think that you're going to leave me. This is important. For the avoidant person, when they want to take a break, they need to communicate that break, not just walk away and stonewall and shut down and give them their back. No, you need to say, I feel overwhelmed, or I feel I need space. Please give me 30 minutes to calm down, relax, unwind after work, and then we can sit down and spend some time with you. Anxious people need that time frame. You need to mention how long you need. If you mention the time and you don't come back, then the anxious partner is not going to trust you. They're not going to trust you. Next time you do that, they're going to say, oh, you're running away. Their voice will get louder. Their anxiety will, their alarm bells will ring, and they'll chase you around the house. Make sure you don't leave the house. So make sure you do as you say. You can say stuff like, having consistency is really important to me. I need consistency. If you can please not make me wait too long when I reach out to you, that would mean so much to me. So that could be like text messages or something, because anxious people get very, very triggered if they send a text or if they call and you don't respond. That one. We hear that a lot, right? So, consistency is important. That's how you'd express that, Yeah. So these are just some ways you can communicate your needs, right? In a very gentle way. Now, how to approach someone who is anxious attached or who has those tendencies. First of all, try to understand that they sometimes have trouble directly communicating their needs and concerns. So even if they're criticizing sometimes, you need to have the emotional maturity enough to look beneath the words. And if you're going to be upset from words all the time, really, you got to have some thick skin in marriage. You know what I mean? We're not perfect. We're human beings. You're going to sometimes lose your shit here, or you're going to be tired there. You're a human, right? You're not going to be perfect walking around, oh, I'm so securely attached and, I don't, no. You're going to have some bad days. I don't care what anyone says, right? So if your partner is anxious or anxiously attached, right? They have this fear of abandonment, and they have, they want closeness. Understand that sometimes they have trouble communicating that, and try to see the emotion underneath the words. Now, I'm not encouraging criticism. We've discussed how not to criticize, but let's just say they do. Let's say their voice is a bit too loud for you. Or let's say they're making, they're saying some stuff that triggers you. If you can look at the emotion beneath the criticism, or the emotion beneath the words, and the need, what are they feeling and what do they need? If you can look at them through that lens while they're going off, you're going to create safety, and you're going to create a secure attachment like this. Okay? You're not taking it personally, right? You might ask them, what are you feeling right now? Or, I can see that you're frustrated. What do you need? Well, I just need you to, I need to spend time with you. Okay, let's talk about that. They're going to start to regulate and decline. The conflict will start to de-escalate, and they will calm down. So this is what we call co-regulation, right? I don't want to get too much into too much stuff today, but that's called co-regulation, where husband and wife can regulate each other when one is not regulated. The next approach, if your partner is anxious, is know that positive reassurance can help them tremendously when they're upset. Positive reassurance when they're upset, right? So give them that positive reassurance, like, I'm here. We're in this together. Use the word we as much as you can. We will get through this, even though this is hard. I know we're disagreeing, but we will find solutions. I love you is another word of reassurance. Offer that reassurance, and that will help them regulate. Try to accept that their fear of abandonment that may never make sense to you is there. So some people may not understand, what is this fear of abandonment crap? You know what I mean? Just accept that their fear of abandonment may never make sense to you, but it's there, right? Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not true. When they project on you, gently redirect the focus back to them and become curious about their experiences. So back to what I was saying, when they're projecting, when they're criticizing, when their voice is loud and etc., and you feel triggered, gently focus the attention back onto them, right? By saying, you seem upset. You seem very angry right now. I'm curious as to know what's going on. What do you need? Again, ask what do you need. So these are some ways for the anxious person, what it looks like, why they do that, and how they need to be treated, pretty much. Okay. If you got any questions, you can ask in the question box. I just need a cup of water because I'm tired. How long we've been here now? Let me see. Okay. Now we're going to go to the avoidant person. So the avoidant person can appear very well put together. They can appear like they have a high self-esteem, like an inflated sense of self. They might even have, grandiosity and a level of entitlement. So they can carry themselves like this, but it's a way to sort of cover that insecurity. Okay. They had to learn how to rely on themselves for their own soothing and comfort, as we said. And it's often, it's something that they would rather, like, I can't trust anybody, trust no one is their WhatsApp status. You know what I mean? They like to give people their privacy. These could be good traits as well. But in marriage, it could cause problems. Thinking that their partner will just give them privacy, right? But then the partner's taken that as distance, and that lacks emotional connection. So they do not want to burden other people. The avoidant person, they don't want to burden other people. They don't want to take up space, right? They just assume that everybody's all right on their own. They struggle to be vulnerable. They don't like to talk about how they feel. Conversations are very shallow with them. It lacks, substance. It's not in depth, right? Conversations with them is not in depth. So it's just very surface level conversations. And they struggle to be vulnerable. They struggle to be intimate because being vulnerable to them means being hurt, they may have been hurt in the past when they were vulnerable. And they tend to dismiss your needs. They dismiss other people's needs. Because as soon as they hear a need, they take it as, you're saying I'm a failure. You're saying that I'm shit. You're saying that, or they take it as, you're not grateful for the hard work that I do at a distance, So they dismiss, and they're very defensive, super defensive. And when there's a shared experience, they can get in touch with your emotions, but other than that, they can't. So if you and them share an enemy, a common enemy, they can sort of go a little bit deeper in their emotions. But other than that, they will not want to go there. So a lot of couples would say, we don't have conversations. I've tried, we go on dates and it's just awkward. We don't know what to talk about. And then that makes it worse, Avoidant people tend to focus on people's flaws as a way to maintain that emotional distance. So they're always looking for flaws. They're always looking for mistakes. So here are some advice for people with strong avoidant tendencies. First, again, be willing to acknowledge your own childhood pain. As much as you try to pretend they're not there, you know that they're there. Acknowledge them, identify them, see where your behaviors are stemming from. There's a concept in Islam, knowing yourself in order to know God type of thing. You need to know who you are. You can't roam this earth for the rest of your life not knowing who you are. Okay, not being in touch with yourself. So acknowledge your own childhood pain, if there were any, and begin to bring some compassion to those parts that have been shut down. Again, instead of that negative dialogue, I'm not good enough, or people will leave me, I can't trust nobody, etc. Have compassion to yourself and tell yourself that you did not deserve to be abused like that. If there was abuse or trauma, which most of the time there is, and that everybody is worthy of love and acceptance for who they are as a person, and not based on what they can accomplish, right? So the next tip is to start paying attention and scanning your subtle feelings a few times a day. Pay attention to your own feelings a few times a day. What I tell some clients is, at the end of each day, people who are avoidant or dismissive, etc., who are out of touch with their emotions, I tell them, I give them a printout of, a list of emotions. And at the end of the day, it's a very simple exercise. You just, before you go to bed, you read out this, this list of feelings, and just read out whatever resonates with you for that day. So, I felt sad. I felt angry today. I felt happy today. I felt lonely today. I felt annoyed today. And that's it. Just lean towards connecting in small ways to your own feelings, even if it feels fake. Okay? Very important way, a very powerful way for you to learn about yourself. Okay? Instead of escaping that and numbing yourself, etc., turn towards yourself and identify your own feelings and what you went through today, just so you can expand on your vocabulary as well. And, our behaviors pretty much are influenced from what we're used to, so if you keep on doing this, it'll become a normal behavior for you. Learn to compromise in your relationship. If you're an avoidant partner, you're dismissive, learn to compromise. See, dismissive people have a, what do they call it? Win some sort of approach, right? Which means that they believe if my partner wins, I lose. Very black and white. Very, very black and white thinking. So they don't believe in compromising. Because if you reverse that, if my partner wins, I lose, then if I win, my partner loses. And that's how they feel they can manage conflict, is only if they win. It's a very black and white approach. Instead, look for win-win situations. All right, so I'm back. I'm not sure what happened, but we're back now. So dismissive people, they have this thinking, this belief that if my partner wins, I lose. It's very black and white. Instead, look for ways to compromise, look for win-win situations. And compromising means you give a little to get a little, right? You don't have to be so rigid on every single thing, okay? Practice sharing small vulnerabilities and observe people's reaction. Again, this is what I tell my clients. You're going to do something different. You're going to do something new, right? And I'll give them this one task to do when their partner is talking to them. You're going to respond in this way. You're going to say, tell me more. You're going to say, that makes sense. Even if it's fake. This is how habits are created. You have to start somewhere. Okay? And language impacts a lot on how our brain is wired, right? So this language of tell me more, tell me what you're feeling, that can really impact you. And then observe the reaction. So, try this new thing, observe the reaction, write it down. Today, I empathized with my spouse. I said, tell me more. That must be hard. And they liked it. It was a good experience. Tick. Do that every day. And then slowly, you will learn that you can do more of that, right? So some ways to communicate your needs if you have dismissive attachment tendencies. So you would say something like, that you need space. Express your needs. Say, I really need some time alone after work. And then after I connect with myself, give me 1 hour and I'm happy to come back and connect with you after that. Give me 40 minutes, give me an hour. Again, give them a specific time. Okay. Tell them your support around this, and having you not take this personally will mean a lot to me. That's what you need to say. You don't say, you're so needy. All you do is complain and all you want to do is spend time with me and get off my case. You don't say that, right? You say, you not taking this personally would mean a lot for me. You can say something like, I can easily get flooded and overwhelmed during arguments. Can you please be sensitive about not criticizing me or probing me too much so that I can stay present and work through things with you? You know, I don't expect you to do this perfectly, but knowing that you're willing to try would mean a lot to me. This is what you need to say to your partner. If you're avoidant, this is what you need to say. Or you can say to your anxious partner, if you're avoidant, it really takes a lot for me to share vulnerable things to you. It would be helpful if you can give me positive feedback, you know, or be gentle with me when I do share that, because I really don't want to share that. When I do share that, please acknowledge that and be gentle with that, you know, and that way I'll feel more comfortable in the future. Now, how to approach someone who's dismissive, right? You would understand that their need, so this is if you're anxious, right, to break this dance, understand that their need for space is often not personal. Again, I'm not talking about narcissists here, okay? Understand that their need for space is often not personal. It isn't about not wanting to be with you. They genuinely fear closeness and intimacy. It dysregulates their nervous system. Until they can get better, this is what you need to know. The next tip is make sure to own your desires and needs, but frame them without blaming them or making them seem like what they're doing is not enough. You know, I hear this a lot from the men, you know, who are naturally lean more towards avoidant, is I'm not appreciated. You know, I feel like everything that I do and it's like it's not enough. And I get that, right? Because that's how it comes across. So for the partner of an avoidant person, don't make them feel like what they're doing is not enough. You can say things like, I appreciate what you do. You know, I understand that you're tired. However, this is what I need. You know, be very gentle. Don't lead with controlling behavior or crowding behavior or protesting behavior. And when you do, acknowledge it quickly and say, let me take that back. You know, let me start again. I was a bit too loud there. I was a bit too demanding there. Let me start again. All right. Understand that they have a high sensitivity to feeling shamed, to feeling exposed, because they're always trying to cover that shame, right? That's why they're so grandiose and macho. And they have the fear and sensitivity to criticism. So understand that, right? So when they're shutting down, try to look beneath. If you want to be emotionally mature and intelligent and secure, don't take it personally when they're starting to shut down. Ask yourself, maybe I was too loud, maybe I was whatever. Maybe he's now feeling shamed or exposed. You know, give him that space to calm himself down. And acknowledge and praise them for their progress when they make small risks of vulnerability. This would mean a lot to them. So when they're starting to be vulnerable in small ways, acknowledge, praise for that progress, you know, and that way you will get them out of their shells slowly, slowly. So these are the ways of, I guess, managing the anxious avoidant dance, the push and pull during conflict. Okay. Again, you want to avoid criticism. You want to avoid defensiveness. You want to avoid contempt, and you want to avoid stonewalling in order to keep the conversation flowing. How does a securely attached person look like? What's their behaviors? What should we be working towards? And I'll leave it with this. A securely attached person, they focus on creating win-win situations. So it's not about just them winning. They focus on win-win situations. They're happy when their partners, is also benefiting, not just them, right? So they compromise a lot. So learn to compromise. The next trait of a securely attached person, they are able to ask for repairs and make repairs more directly. So there's more repair attempts after conflict. We all stuff up in conflict. The securely attached person, the person who is secure, they make repair attempts. And that is the secret weapon of, happy couples, is that It's not about not fighting. It's about the repair attempt. Taking responsibility, acknowledging what you did, reaching out to repair somehow. Okay. They're not passive or passive aggressive or aggressive, right? So passive aggressive is, you didn't say you love me today, or, it's been a while since we've had sex. You never want to have sex with me, whatever, right? So it's an indirect assault, right? They're not passive aggressive. They're direct but gentle with their need. They're assertive, right? And they're not passive where they just feel like they don't want to burden other people, and they overextend and they just say yes to everything, even if it hurts them, because they don't want to annoy people. No, securely attached people would say, this hurts me, please don't do that. I don't like when you do this, Habibi. It hurts my feelings. However, I do like when you do this. That means a lot to me. Can you do more of that instead? They're very direct, but they're expressive and gentle. Another sign of a securely attached person, they have a strong capacity to self-soothe themselves. They soothe themselves, and to also co-regulate with others. They have a strong capacity to do that. Whereas the insecure attachment style people, they can barely regulate themselves, let alone someone else, right? It's really a toxic dance or a cycle that the anxious avoidant person has. But the securely attached person is able to soothe themselves, and then once they're soothed, they can co-regulate. They can help their partner also soothe. Another sign or trait of a securely attached person is they tend to be highly attuned and sensitive to the emotions of others. So they're not stuck in an egocentric bubble where it's just me, 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 me. Even during times of stress, or, when they're in conflict, they can still acknowledge and see and empathize with their partner's emotions. So even while they're stressed, they can empathize, right? So that's where they can compromise and also see other people's emotions. Another sign is they're generally responsive and available when loved ones express needs. Okay. Opposite to this, obviously, is whenever there's a need expressed, the dismissive person, the avoidant person, dismisses that. The securely attached person is opposite to that. They are responsive when their partner is expressing a need. They know that with my partner expressing this need, they take it as information, they take it as data, they take it as, this is a evidence of how I can love them, right? Another sign, or the last sign, is that they tend to have a strong but flexible sense of their own boundaries. So going back to the two circles, we call it like the Venn diagram. Avoidant people, again, they want husband and wife, they want to create that distance as far as possible, right? Avoidant people, when they get too close, their nervous system starts to become dysregulated and they start to push away or pull away. Okay. Anxious people need too much closeness, so they want a enmeshment type of thing. So imagine the two ovals, right? Two ovals are eclipsing, overlap. There's no space for, there's no space to breathe. It's too much closeness. Securely attached people are, in the middle, so that they create a third space. Maybe I can just draw it here for you guys. I'm not a good drawer, but something like this, right? I don't like that one. Let me do it again. So, yeah, something like that. So here is partner A, partner B, and here is the relationship. Here is the connection. Here is the sharing of sex and intimacy and needs and reciprocating feelings and needs and responsibilities, etc., etc. But there's still some autonomy here and space here for each other to breathe, right? It's not enmeshed. So I'm tired. I feel like I spoke a lot. I hope this is beneficial. I know people wanted to watch it at 7 o'clock because I get more viewers then, but I couldn't do this at home because I got a lot of kids and it's too loud, so I thought I'd do it in my office. So I hope this was beneficial. If you have any questions, you can still put them in there even on the replay, and I'll do my best to respond to them. And thanks for watching.